Welcome to One Thought Growth. Today we are going to further our exploration of the four agreements by diving into the third agreement, do not make assumptions. Quick disclaimer, I never enjoy living through life by hearing don't do this or don't do that. So for me, practicing this agreement, just like practicing the second agreement, is actually all about enhancing your self-awareness and enhancing your ability to be mindful of what's going on throughout the day. Because I'm going to teach you that the importance of this agreement is really about rooting yourself in the present moment and not getting too lost in our thought projections and in our minds. And I'm going to help demonstrate the power of this agreement by sharing with you a very, very impactful story that was shared with me a few years back. So we got three major things we're going to cover today. Make sure you stay to the end of the video to see all of them. And if you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to the channel. Here at One Thought Growth, we synergize ancient wisdom with contemporary teachings for personal growth. Alright, so the story that I'm going to share with you was shared with me back when I was living in Boston and had a really profound impact on me. Alright, so the story goes that after a long day of work, this man told me that he went home and he had to take the train. It was a wintry night, and if you've ever lived in Boston in the winter, it's cold, it's wet, and it's super windy. Now usually the trains after around 7:30, they tend to really calm down. And the gentleman told me that he had gotten on the train after rush hour. It was kind of quiet. There's kind of like this sense of serene, just kind of like, I'm exhausted, I'm just going to sit here. At least that's how I used to feel on the train when I would get on after a long day of work at around 7:30. So the man has kids, he has a wife. He was texting his wife, telling her that he's coming home and that everything's well. All of a sudden he gets to a stop where there's the hospital center and a woman and two kids come on the train. Now, he told me that right away he felt like something was off. And the kids were going crazy, they were running, they were yelling. But what he said was really interesting was that this woman was just not doing anything. And he felt really strong in his heart. You know, he's a father, that this woman needs to discipline her kids. She needs to do something. This isn't right. You shouldn't let your kids be acting like this. And that's an interesting point, because here you have a father who has kids, so he has some relative experience in his own life with this. And he's beginning to think like, I know how this woman should act. And this goes into the first thing we're going to talk about today, which is we assume things because we think we know, but we don't actually know. This can be a bit bothersome to acknowledge at times because we want to know. That's the thing, we really, really want to know. We're curious as human beings. But each person, as I've illustrated so many times throughout this series, is in their own reality and different things are happening. So in this story, the man was sitting there and he said that he usually never says anything to people, but he was watching the situation. He felt like he needed to say something, like he had a right to say something. He told me that he was a father and that he felt like him saying something would spark something within her. So he's telling me that he really believed he was coming from a place of help, from a place of heart, even though he was going to be stern with his words. And this is interesting because here we have two people who don't know each other at all. And we have this guy who's beginning to create this story in his head with him being this character for this other person. And that is really related to the second point, is that we dream things up in our imagination when we don't understand situations. So we can think of like assuming or assumptions as like a dream. And we all do it because when the assumption comes, all of a sudden the story comes about the assumption. And it creates almost like a little fantasy in our head where we are this character and everyone else is this character and we know certain things, but it's not rooted in reality. So what happened in this story was the guy felt, righteous. And he felt like he should say something because it was for the best. And he looked over to the woman who was sitting over there and he said, "Hey, you should discipline your kids. Your kids need to be disciplined. They shouldn't be running around the train like that." And listen to this. He told me that he was never going to forget this moment. That the woman looked up at him and he said time literally stopped. And what she said was, "My husband just passed away. We just left the hospital." Now that's a very profound thing to hear, but I believe that it really gives justice to this agreement. Because this man does what we all do. He assumed that he knew what was best for everyone else. He assumed that he knew that woman's situation, what she was going through, what she needed to do. And he had some experiential knowledge behind him. He was a father, and he was trying to do things right. So he thought it was his responsibility to share his knowledge with her, share his opinions with her. But there was no space in this relationship for that. She was entitled to live her own life, even though the person, in this case the man, did not agree with how she was behaving. And then when he ultimately approached the woman, he discovered that his whole thing that he dreamed up, his assumptions that he made about the situation, were completely off, were completely wrong. And that illustrates again why dreams and assumptions are linked. It takes us out of the grounded firmness of reality and sends us further into dreams, into fantasies. So as I mentioned earlier, I never like to encourage myself or others to don't do things. So therefore, really, I believe that it's all about begin to be mindful of the assumptions that we make and also begin to question the assumptions that we make. Catch yourself, be aware, ask yourself at times, am I assuming too much? Do I really know what's going on? Can I use my power of empathy to try and step deeper into their shoes? This is part one of this agreement. In the second part, I'm going to really dive into what this is all about in our immediate relationships and how practicing this agreement can enhance and improve your communication skills and can also really help you distinguish what you want in life and be sure that others know what that is so that there's a really firm understanding between you and those that you're in a relationship with. So thank you for tuning in today. My name is Zach Pontrello. I welcome you to One Thought Growth. If you haven't done so already, please check out the previous videos from this series, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon.